Welcome to the Association 4.0 podcast, your association's no fluff playbook to navigating and thriving in Industry 4.0 or the digital marketplace. Each week, we bring expert insights to help you and your association stay ahead of the curve.
Hello, my name is Sherry Budziak, and I'm the host of this week's podcast. I'm here today with John Challice. He is the Senior Vice President of Business Development at Hum. I'm so excited to have John here to talk to us today about data and the future of associations. So John, thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to talk with you.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for the honor.
Great. So John, we hear a lot about data in the context of discussion about digital transformation, terms like data readiness, data strategy, data-driven, first-party data, third-party data, data is the new oil. So what exactly is or are these terms, and what is data, and why should it be such a big deal for associations?
Yeah, so data is the new oil, and or so they say anyway, which simply means that data is valuable. And like oil, it's kind of useless in its kind of crude form. You have to refine it and do clever things with it. But that's sort of where the comparison ends, because unlike oil, data is not a single-use commodity, and there isn't a fixed amount of it on Earth. In fact, we're producing petabytes of data a day. So it's just actually coming faster and faster. It's not particularly tricky to extract, and it's not bad for the planet if you use it. In fact, I'd argue it's actually good for the planet. So in a way, it might be better to compare it to solar, right? If you're not collecting sunbeams at the moment, you're kind of missing an opportunity. And I think that's how I'd encourage people to think about data. Data is the at its heart for an association executive, it's a strategic asset. And I think that's what you should think, how one should think about it. And of course, when I say data, I'm really talking about first-party data. And just to remind everybody, zero-party data is information that people provide you, and that's most of what associations currently gather. What is your name? What's your address? What's your email address? Who do you work for? What's your title? That kind of demographic information sits usually in an AMS, and that's zero-party data. It's provided by an individual to you. First-party data is what you observe. It's you watching what courses they take, what articles they read, what events they go to, what comments and questions they ask at a webinar, and so on. That's the data. That first-party data is what many associations are not collecting at the moment. And those are the sunbeams that are not doing any good for their batteries. I would guess that zero-party data is maybe 10% or less of the data that an organization can and should be collecting, and would be able to if they had the right systems. So the reason first-party data are important is because it's the key to moving to that next level of member delight. So if your goal, and I think every association exec would say, my goal is member delight, right? I want people to feel they're getting value out of membership in my organization. You're going to need to do what some consumer groups are doing right now, what Netflix does, what Amazon does, what Walmart does, Walmart.com does on their digital properties, and that is notice what your customers are doing, and differentiate their experience with you based on your observations of their behavior. That's first-party data. That's the food, and of course, what comes out of that data is the food are the actionable insights that you can use as useful results.
Yeah, that's really great. I know that we always talk about, even as organizations, associations have all of this opportunity to really look at their data, but they don't spend the time doing that, right? They're just, and there's things that you can see from, as you said, kind of how associations, their customers are interacting with content online, what they're doing in those behaviors, but they're really missing that opportunity by not having people focus on that. So let me, I recently, John, saw a presentation that you did about how associations are kind of existential. It's a make or break moment, and that a dramatically improved data capability is part of the way forward. So kind of what's your argument to that, and why is suddenly a bigger deal than maybe it was a year ago?
Sure. So even before the pandemic hit, and we'll talk about the pandemic in a second, but before the pandemic hit, there were signs that associations broadly were hitting some headwinds. So first, if you go back and you take a look at Growth Zone's annual association report, more than 50% of associations were seeing flat or declining membership in 2019. In fact, 57% of associations fell in that category. And of those that saw declining membership, the average decline was 9%, which is material, right? And when you dig into that, you discover that a lot of it has to do with the younger potential members, or rather people who are younger in the workforce who are not becoming members. So in MGI's 2019 membership marketing benchmark report, millennials, who Pew says are those born between 81 and 96, and younger, were 20% of association membership. Deloitte is telling us that by 2025, they're going to be 75% of the workforce. So that's only 4 years away. There's a kind of a demographic cliff here that I think associations are facing. And I think pre-COVID, it was masked a bit, but then COVID happened, and it kind of changed everything, because two of the biggest sources of revenue for associations, membership dues, because there's a dramatic rise in unemployment, which meant a lot of people were no longer interested in joining professional associations, and live events stopped, right? So that's a double win. So now I'm arguing that in order to survive, associations are going to need to amp up their game. And one obvious question is, well, these younger people, where are they going? What are they doing? Where are they going for the things that an association typically offers? And I think the answer is entities that organizations, associations haven't really thought of as competitors. But so your association, you've got a job board. You're an association, you've got a community site for networking. You know what's also a good networking and job board site? LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Twitter, also good for networking. Coursera for education and credentialing. So there are just a lot of other places out there now. These entities are coming in, these very well-funded entities are coming in, and they're kind of disaggregating the association's value proposition. If you want to fix this problem, then you can't make good decisions, if you don't have data.
Yeah. So can you give me some examples of kind of on the ground benefits associations get from being data driven? We all talk about being data driven, but I guess, how do you see that, and what are those benefits?
Sure. So I just talked about, evidence-based decision making. So if you have data, you make better decisions, or at least you have the raw materials to make better decisions.
Right.
So that's basically business decision support. So a lot of associations are thinking about, how many tiers of membership should they have, and what should they price those tiers at? If there's certain kinds of data you can collect that will help you make decisions like that. You can also, once you've made a decision, pretty quickly see how it's being taken up, and so long as you're willing to pivot quickly, again, using evidence-based decision making, you'll have this ability which you wouldn't have had before. Another big one right now for people are D&I initiatives, right? How are you able to think about diversifying your membership, your employee base, your board, if you don't have good data on how they self-identify? I mean, there are things that you need to be collecting and analyzing that will allow you to do some of the things that I think strategic priorities for folks. So decision support is one. The second would be around product development. So imagine being able to create an ad hoc event based on something that you can tell is of great topical interest to a particular segment of your membership right now, and to invite those people to attend that event. But that's something you can do now only if you have that data. So event planning, conference planning, even things like, as I say, ad hoc webinars, the things you can do if you have data coming in of people's topical interests and affinities are enormous. You can also, on the other side, decide what things you want to retire, products that aren't doing particularly well. You can even start to see maybe why they're not doing well. Are people getting stuck at a particular point on a course? You can see course completion rates, but if you're able to tell all the people who have this demographic profile don't finish this course, there are things you can do about it. You'll never be able to tell that if your data are siloed. Third would be marketing. I mean, at its, being data-driven means you can employ some of the most modern marketing techniques, which have been shown to be effective. Things like behavioral segmentation, demand generation, nurturing campaigns, use of lookalike audiences to grow your membership, A/B testing, programmatic advertising and retargeting, real-time personalization, content analytics. Honestly, many associations aren't doing any of that, and it's because they don't have the information they need to be able to do it. And then finally, you have something with data that you can offer to sponsors that you haven't been able to offer before. And sponsors are keen to reach your member audience. You will start to see if you're capturing data well, intent signals, and those are valuable to sponsors. And sponsors will be willing to support you in your efforts to put information and content in front of your membership that they find valuable, and sponsors can use as a springboard to selling. So at the end of the day, it's everything we just talked about as a challenge. It's more members, growing your international membership, growing your younger membership. It's more engagement, which means more renewals, it's better products, and it's more non-dues revenue.
Yeah, and I think, we're also talking with some of our customers who are in a better position than most, that are really starting to say, what is membership? And if we can really personalize an experience, maybe we don't have specific membership, maybe it is a subscription, and these are the things you get under that subscription, kind of like more, thinking through that I guess kind of Netflix model. So anyway, I think there's a lot of opportunities, but what I'm seeing that's really challenging for organizations is really their ability to collect and use data effectively. So how would you kind of characterize associations in terms of their ability to collect and use data effectively? And then how can an association tell if they're data driven?
Right. So in general, I would characterize associations as behind most consumer facing organizations. And I have to be careful not to generalize, because there are some associations, but they tend to be big and somewhat wealthy,
Mm-hmm.
that are doing a fine job and are well on their way. But most associations are behind certainly this new non-traditional competition that I just talked about. We have a 5-level rubric we use when we are talking to an association to sort of figure out where they're at. And we ask them questions about kind of how leadership views data, how they're using it at the moment, what kind of access to analytics tools employees have, is the data siloed, and the 5 levels are impaired, localized, aspirational, tactical, and strategic. You can sort of see that kind of natural ladder. And I think most associations currently I've put in that second category, localized, which means that the leadership gets that data is important. Some data is being collected, but it is siloed in the organization. So the events data sits in the events system. The AMS holds the demographic data and some maybe financial data. The LMS holds all the educational data, and the CMS system holds all the, if there are collecting data at all, interactions on the .org website, or if they have a publication, which articles they've read and so on. But it's not connected together. And I think that's where most associations, that's kind of where they sit. How can you tell where you are? Some of the questions I just asked. Have you ever conducted a data audit? How siloed is your data? How clean is your data? Which is to say, how accurate is it, and how well harmonized is it with other systems? If you don't have a central data team, that is to say, a group of people who are responsible for thinking about data in your organization that spans marketing, IT, publications, education, events, membership, then you are not you're not in the aspirational category yet. Do you have a published data strategy? Do you have a data governance policy? Do you have the technology that allows you to harmonize? And that's how people can tell whether or not they're data ready. And as I say, it's a journey.
Yeah, for sure. We recently, I get the calls of, Sherry, I need a new X system because something's wrong with our membership directory, or something's wrong with X, Y, or Z. And you come to find out it's all about the data, right? Like they can't move their organization forward because their data is not clean, and they don't have data governance, and and nobody's really focused on it. So they're limited in how they can advance their organization. So talk to me a little bit about how you feel like association leadership should react to kind of what you've been talking about.
Sure. So just picking up with the point you just made, data is a lifestyle, right? It's not a project. It's not something that you do once. It's like eating right and exercising. It's just something you make part of your life forever and ever. I think so being data minded and realizing it's a way of life, that's important. Not thinking about this as like, okay, we need to update our website. A website update, that could be a project, although I know lots of people would actually, even that's not a project, right? That is also a way of life. But data for sure is a way of life. If you're not ready to sort of just make that a thing you think about all the time, then you're not ready. So this, what I'm talking about is a cultural change, right? And cultural change is hard.
Yeah.
Anybody who's run an organization knows that. And so leadership, and I'm talking about the CEO and senior C-level folks, they have to be on board. If they're not, it's not going to work. So the first, so what should leadership do? Leadership should say, okay, I buy this argument that this is going to be important to our future. And I buy this argument that it's going to span my entire organization, one. So it's not just membership, it's not just marketing, but it's going to cross our organization. That it's going to involve a change in culture, and that it's going to have to be a priority. Your sense of urgency will depend on whether or not you buy my argument about it being kind of an existential point right now. But that's the most important thing. Now, here's the good news. Once you've done that, which is sort of the hardest part, the next thing is to pick one spot and go in and try and do something. So it's more like an agile software development project. Go in to your membership, or go into pick one use case, which might be increasing attendance at an event, and say, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do that one first, and then build that up. You still want to have this whole team in place. You still want to have a strategy. You still want to the aligning this to your business goals and so on. But you pick that one manageable thing, and then that becomes your project. And it also, because you pick one thing, the technical integrations are a little easier. At the end of the day, the ROI analysis that anyone's going to want to do on it will be easier. So you have to make the big commitment up front. I'm going to get married to data. Data and we're going to be life partners. And now let's get in and plan what day one's going to be like. And it's just one use case. That's all it takes.
Yeah, I work with an organization that when the executive director really focused a lot on data and having clean data and having everything and in this case was at the time their AMS system and had data governance rules around it in order to be a data-driven organization. And really, you touched on something that I think is really important. It was a top-down, it was their culture. They hired people that were able to use technology. They, if he found out that they had some sort of Excel spreadsheet outside of the system, it was like almost like a fireable offense. Yeah, he's like, I'll just fire them. I'm like, not to fire them, but okay. But because of that, they have been able to grow, and we've watched this. They were doing this before anybody was really talking about, data dashboards and all those types of things that everybody's trying to think about now. So we really saw kind of a real big return for the organization because they were able, you touched on some things. So as you're talking, like I was thinking about this organization, they were able to find people based on their data when that created more diversity on their board. Yeah. They were able to see, oh, there's this member that's extremely engaged on our online activities, but they never come to an annual meeting. Well, maybe they should be a part of our volunteer structure. Let's reach out to them because they are very, highly engaged, which they may have never met them and never known without knowing all the products that they purchased and all those types of, and like I said, in their online message boards and the downloading papers and all those types of things. So I think there's some real opportunities. So kind of rolling into that is like, what does technology play in data readiness and data capability? And, I know to some people listening in, they're like, oh, technology changes can be hard and expensive or both, like what is something associations can do today and what can they afford to do?
Right. So you in order to bring all your data together, so you're collecting data right now, it's probably siloed. In order to bring it together and in order to be able to get useful insights out of it, analytics and so on, the good news is that there are products that exist to do this. And in fact, there are at least 2 products built specifically for association that will allow you to do this. And I'm really talking about the class of product called the Customer Data Platform, which is comes out of the e-commerce world. It's a new class of software. It didn't exist before 2013. For a while, people thought, well, you know what? That's what our CRM or AMS will do. That's where we'll keep this data. But even Salesforce.com, which is the biggest CRM provider on the planet, has learned that CRM isn't a good place to hold behavioral data as well as the demographic data and allow these sorts of analyses. It's there are various reasons for it, but the ability to do the kinds of things we're talking about has sort of resulted in this kind of more of a CDP or even a data lake with a BI analytics frame on it, kind of architectural approach. So here's the advantage. So the good news is that there are products. The other good news is the way CDPs work is that they kind of overlay your existing software stack. So you don't actually have to change any of the systems you're using right now. CDPs simply listen for events across your existing stack. If you like your stack, you keep it. If you want to swap something out, Now you have a CDP employed, you can do something you could never do before, which is you can do a hot swap, not have to worry about a one-time data migration or about losing any data. So all the data is now sitting in your CDP. It's there for you to look at. You don't like your LMS, you want to swap it out for another one, do that, and you don't miss a beat. Same with your AMS. If you're switching your AMS, you don't miss a beat. So, so this type of product is actually pretty beneficial, I think, for associations.
Yeah,
Unless
that's
you
great.
use best-in-class software for your individual special application.
Yeah, that's great. So what about AI and machine learning? You know, those are amongst some key technological leaps that are happening in the world at the moment. So are they related to data and data capabilities?
Yeah, I mean, you can't have AI. Well, actually, I have a colleague who always points out that when people say AI, when salespeople say AI, not me, of course, because I would never do this, but people say AI, they really mean software. But there is true AI and there is true machine learning. In our product, actually, we do employ proper, real, honest to goodness machine learning for some taxonomy work that we do. But you cannot do AI without data. So data is food that AI eats. Down the road, AI and machine learning have great potential for all businesses, including associations. But if you're not collecting data, then it's not going to help. So yeah. It's a requirement, necessary requirement.
So John, you know, associations will say, well, you know, Sherry, we're mission driven, and you know, should we really be collecting all of this data and information about our members, and isn't that creepy, or whatever the case might be? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I don't think it's creepy. I think, frankly, it's what people expect. Facebook collects probably more data on people. In fact, what they used to say that they know you better than your spouse.
Yeah, that's creepy.
Yeah, but 1 billion people use it every week.
Right.
Right? So, right. And that's without the Chinese market.
Yeah.
So, 1 in 6 people on the planet are basically using Facebook. So I think the fact is people are there may be sort of yeah. So I think the bottom line is that people expect entities they work with, especially if they work with them closely, to get to know them. And you can't do that if you're not paying attention. And there's only 2 ways you can get to know someone. One is to watch what they do, and the other is to ask them what they want, right? Get more zero-party data. So let's say you do a survey, and let's say you do it, I don't know, once a quarter, which would be a lot for many places. People would get a little tired of answering surveys once a quarter. It's a quarter old when you get it, and it may not even be true. And I go back to my favorite Netflix story, which is when Netflix asks people what kind of movies they're interested in. Fully a third of people say they're interested in foreign films. But I promise you that a third of people, and Netflix knows this, don't watch foreign films on Netflix. No offense to Squid Game, because of course that's an exception to the rule. But if people aspire to watch foreign films, but they don't. First-party data is what people are actually doing. I would argue people expect you to collect it, and because they want this personalized experience. And again, I'm not saying you're going to sell this data to anybody. I'm not saying become a third-party data provider. I'm just saying use it to make your product better. Use it to make your member experience better. Use it to delight your customers. You can't do that if you're not paying attention. It'd be like going on a date and not listening to what anybody's telling you over dinner. What a horrible experience that would
be. Right. So, John, before you wrap up, this has been a great conversation and very insightful. Where would you say an association should begin? Like, how would one just get started on improving their data readiness?
Sure. So first, buy into what we talked about today and understand what data can do for you. Second, align your data strategy. So create a data strategy and align it with your business strategy. That's absolutely critical. First step. Second step. Third, understand you don't need to measure everything, just measure what counts. Fourth, I'd say consider data a core business asset and think of it that way. And then be prepared to make data part of your daily life. This is about evidence-based decision-making and developing leading-edge tools and functionality within your association. And you'll notice all of these things I've listed are philosophical things. They're things that you just need to think about. They're not actually anything you need to do. The doing starts once you've got this. But those are the first 5 steps.
It's great. So I really think, it's important for associations, if they want to advance and move forward in the future, to really think very, strategically around how they're utilizing data, how they're managing their data, how they're collecting their data, all the things you touched upon. So, so I really appreciate your time sharing your knowledge with the association community. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, how could they do that?
They can email me at John, John, at hum.works. And if they do that, if anybody's interested, anybody listening is interested in we have a little data readiness checklist that we kind of put together that goes into some of the concepts I talked about today in a bit more detail. That is it's a little PDF. I'd be happy to send it to anybody who wanted. So yeah, John, John, at hum.works.
All right, that's great. And for anybody listening, if you want more information on this topic, we are doing a webinar with HUM on October 21st. So we're excited about that. And then we are also in development of a white paper that will go into more detail on this topic. So if you go to www.orgcommunity.com, you can find out more information about those 2 upcoming knowledge opportunities. So thanks so much, John, for sharing your time with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation, Sherry. It was awesome. I appreciate it.
All right, great.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and discovered tips and information that will add value to your leadership style and your association. .org Source specializes in positioning teams for success with solutions for technology, strategy, and marketing. Please contact us at info@orgsource.com or visit www.orgsource.com to find out how to keep your organization on track to Association 4.0.